I stay pretty busy, and I wanted to tell you just a little bit, some of the things that I volunteer for, some of the things that I work on, so you'll understand why it is so necessary that I apply some of the techniques that I'm going to share with you in my day-to-day schedule. My husband and I are very active at Calvary on Ainwell. We work with the fourth graders in the Awana program. My husband also works with the kids in the second service for the Powerhouse. We also are coordinating our church's Christmas play. I'm on my son's PTO board. I'm also have 3 kids, a 7-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. My dad is in assisted living, and we go by and see him every day. I also stay very busy at my job. I do the marketing for 78 positions and also for the hospital. And then I also market for 23 physician practices. Also, I'm the president of the Georgia Society for Healthcare Marketing and Public Relations. So with all of those hats I wear, I absolutely have to employ a majority of the techniques that I'm going to share with you today. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we've had technical difficulties. See, this is... Okay. All right. So, time management. Time management is one of those things that's the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're CEO of a hospital. It doesn't matter if you're a bank teller. It doesn't matter if you work at a drive-in at McDonald's. All of us have equal amounts of time. We only got 24 hours in a day that we can actually get things done. And this is going to sound really, really harsh, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. Nobody wants to hear excuses. I mean, I understand that you're busy. We're all busy, and this is what I tell my employees at the hospital whenever I'm teaching our continuing education programs, is nobody wants to hear those excuses because we've all got excuses. Every aspect of our lives we can make excuses. And the screen that you'll see in a second will look at some of those excuses. But in business, in my business life, yeah, we're good. I oversee a number of different programs, and the continuing ed program, it never fails. I work with a bunch of grown-ups that act like youngins. We have trimesters that we offer these classes, and on these trimesters, it never fails. We have payouts for our employees that participate in this continuing ed program. All 1,000 employees have to take 10 hours. We teach customer service. We teach some very job-specific kind of things. And it never fails that at the end of every trimester, about 2-3 days before the end of the trimester, we've already offered 30, 40 classes to accommodate people's schedule. It never fails. Somebody will call my office and say, I really would like to be a part of the payout. If we're going to have a payout, can you please extend, can you come to my department and teach a class? And this is going to sound really harsh, but it's the honest to goodness truth. Their lack of preparation is not my concern. And I know that's how a number of your professors and that sort of thing feel. There are a number of culprits that deprive you of your time. Disorganization, if your life is disorganized, I can assure you that lack of planning and that sort of thing is causing you different problems. So there are some underlying issues that are some time killers. And so what we're going to do now is just a little bit of an exercise, and I'm pulling up my countdown clock now, because what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Close your eyes. All right, and so what we're going to do is I want you in your head, I don't want you to count, I want you in your head to time yourself 20 seconds. What I want to prove to you is that the concept of time is very, very different for all people. So what I want you to do is I want you to keep your eyes closed. And after you think 20 seconds has expired, I want you to raise your hand and open your eyes and look around. And so you'll see in just a minute how many people have different perceptions of time than what you have. All right? Everybody go to sleep. Ready? Go. have everybody's hand raised now. The first hand that I saw go up went up after 4 seconds. And then we started seeing hands at 6 seconds, and then at 10 seconds, and then at 12 seconds. Then we had some at 13, some at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then right over here you were down on at 20. Then we had 21, 22, 25, and then the longest span of time was 26. And the point of this exercise is to truly understand that we all have different concepts of our time and how we use our time. So if you look up here, I want you to take just a second on your worksheets. You're going to see what are 3 productivity time killers. So look, here are some productivity time killers. Look in general and things in your life that you can cut. Do you have your smartphone set where you automatically get every email the second that it comes in? Do you have Facebook? Is there incoming messages? What is it in your life that comes into you where you're inundated with information that you're not prepared for in that moment because you're focused on another task? So take just a second and think of some overall kind of time killers in your life. And then think on a personal level, what are some of your time killers? Where do you feel like your time is being used? All right, guys, take just another second. Are y'all always this quiet? Yes.
Back in a long time, I was 27 probably because I'm 69 years old and it takes longer for my brain to think.
It's all right. That sounds like an excuse. All right, guys. So these are things that you can go back and reflect on later. Moving on, managing interruptions. I do have a very, very full and busy day, and I'm going to be quite honest with you. Vendors, I have so many vendors that call on me because I market for so many positions and so many practices that I have learned in my office, I need to put books in the chair. Because if I have an open chair in my office with an open door, vendors who are on their timetable will not schedule appointments. They'll come into my office and they'll immediately sit down. And I find that that's an interruption to my busy day. And I know it sounds very harsh, but it's a lot easier for me to stand and have a standing meeting and ask them to schedule a time to sit down and chat, even if it's a few weeks in advance. It's a lot nicer than them sitting down and then getting pushed out the door. So I have found that that's one way that I manage some of the interruptions that I have in my life. And I'm sure, obviously, with you guys being college students and probably having families at home and that sort of thing, there's a lot of different factors that come into play in managing your day as well. Who has a problem with procrastination? Apparently, everybody that sits in the back, nobody in the front. Procrastination is one of those things. It's kind of like whenever you're a kid, and as a kid, my daughter, it never fails. She's going to eat whatever she enjoys the most on her plate. That's what she's going to eat first. And so I have told her, I'm like, eat your Brussels sprouts first. And it's always a source of discussion. But if you are able to knock out those things that you hate the worst first, then your life gets better. And I'll show you some of the tactics in a minute. And then obviously we talked about too, being more accountable for your time and understanding where your time goes. A portion of that is really just being organized, and I'll show you some of the tactics that I use. Also setting priorities and managing interruptions and delegating responsibility. All of these are very important aspects. What I find in my job, and I'm sure your life too, is that we have very shifting priorities. What could be a priority in one moment, maybe in the next moment is not such a priority. So managing shifting priorities is also something else. So we're going to look at some of those productivity killers: procrastination, poor planning, and organization for success. But before we do that, I want you to take just a second, look back at your sheet, and I want you to start making, right on the side of your paper here, start making your to-do list. What are you worried about now? What are you thinking about? Personal, professional, anything that's fogging up your day. Think of deadlines that you have in school. Even maybe a really giant credit card bill that you're worried about. What overall in your life are you worried about? I'm going to show you a couple of techniques in a minute that I use to break some of those down. So it'll be very important that you have your list. Looks like some of you have longer of this than others. All right, so we'll come back to that in just a second. But if you're going to get a grasp of your time, you need to determine where your time is being used. And so on your worksheet in your own, if you take some time and track, write down clearly, hour to hour, from evening to evening, just for a couple of weeks, I think you can probably get a stronger grasp as to what your time is being used for and how it's being used. This is an activity log that I created for my intern not too long ago because she needed help identifying some of those things in her life to get through her school and her internship, and she was trying to start it. She had so many factors going on in her life that this was created for her, and so she tracked it for a week and she gauged it, and then she took it and made percentages. You know, she was finding that 30% of her time was being used in ways that maybe could have been used in another way. So again, managing those expectations and being aware of those interruptions during your life. One solution that's a very, very easy solution is a 72-hour solution. How many of you have a hard time saying no? I'm that person. That is one of my greatest weaknesses. I have a difficult time saying no because I have so many interests. And so if you are able to develop a 72-hour solution, when somebody calls you on the phone and says, nobody is able to do this particular project, and we really need a blood drive in this community. And so these are some of the phrases that I've learned over time. Yes, I'll do it if nobody else steps forward. You're not saying no, but you're not saying an immediate yes. You can count on me as your plan B. Also not a bad statement, it's also a positive statement. Give me a call next week if you haven't worked it out. I'll think about it and get back to you. I really don't have the time to do a good job, and it just wouldn't be right for me to take it. If we were able to say some of those statements, it would free up a lot of our time. You don't automatically have to say yes to everything that's asked of you. And we'll talk about master goals and plans in a minute, but if a lot of these specific things that are tying up your time are not directly aligned with those things that you want to accomplish, then maybe a yes isn't always the right answer. So again, if you're able to know. Sure.
Otherwise, if I say yes, I will if no one else steps up, but as soon as I say yes, they usually take that as a definite, or they won't try to get someone else, and then they say they're wrong. You say yes, so it would be that you're obligating yourself if you say yes.
Not if you combine, no, I agree with you. And so sometimes you may need a more affirmative statement. So if you follow that up with, yes, I'll do that if no one else steps up, but I really don't think I have the time to do a good job. And if you're setting the expectations in advance, I think sometimes that does free you up because a definite no is difficult because the world has this perception that if you're a good person, you're going to volunteer and that we all have this leisure-free time. And again, it's a delegation kind of thing. So for some people, myself included, I need a stronger. Unless this is DEF CON, don't call me. So if you're able to track the number of times and the people, sometimes I find there are trigger people in your life that will call on you every single time an event comes up. So if you're able to identify and remove some of those time wasters that are in your life, and set limits on people who waste your time. I do have a very sweet and dear friend whom I love, and I have committed that it's a very busy time of her year, who does fantastic and amazing things, but I understand and appreciate that I can't live in that specific community-minded event, and so I do a lot in block time where I'm completely solely focused on her mission, but after that, then I do have to move along. Meetings. I find myself being in meetings, and we meet about things like having meetings. And so I don't know, in college, if you guys had the same kind of thing. Whenever I was in school, there was an awful lot of study groups and that sort of thing. And in my business world, I have found that it's much more beneficial that I have a very scheduled and set agenda. Like now I mentioned that I'm president of a state society. I'm on the line on a conference call once a month, and I block 1 hour, and I block 1 hour, not only my time, but I have to be cognizant of the other 20 people's time. They're being pulled away from their jobs as well. And so on the agenda that I set out, I have very, very specific agenda that's sent out, a month or so in advance. And I will say, this is our agenda. Let me know if you need more or less time to talk about your key tactics and that sort of thing. So whenever we open discussions, sometimes whenever you have 20 very opinionated people on the line, sometimes it's difficult to maintain those time constraints. So if you're able to say, okay, so this warrants a subcommittee. And so have any of you ever served on PTO? You would not believe whenever I was PTO president the number of subcommittees that I would have to create. Because some people were very, very passionate, and it's not a bad thing, it's a great thing to be so energized and compassionate. We would have so many different opinions on the t-shirt design that it warrants a subcommittee. So we would pull together a subcommittee, and that subcommittee would bring back designs to the next meeting. And then we would have 3 or 4 to look at after that had all been hashed out as a time saver. So avoiding the meetings unless you absolutely have to. And I think an awful lot of us think that we're really good at multitasking, and I'm telling you, not everybody is. And some projects you can multitask, and you can take on a number of different things at the same time, but oftentimes you lack the ability to be able to multitask very well. It does us no good if we have our hands in lots and lots of little pots, and we're not able to focus and drill down and accomplish and succeed on those other tasks. Be less accessible. I have found that this can disconnect me from the world. I have found that sometimes I need very, very focused time where I turn off my ringer in my office, I minimize all of the screens on my computer, and I'm very, very focused on what I need to do. And sometimes it means disconnect by coming in 1 hour on a Saturday whenever I know that no vendors will be stopping by, and that nobody will be calling on the phone, and that I'm not going to be getting the emails. And I can get more accomplished in 1 hour, very, very focused time, than I would if I allotted an entire day to it. So we're going to talk about a few techniques, and again, looking back at your page, these are some of the techniques that I employ and some that work for me, so I'm going to share those with you specifically. So if you just want to take a minute and write down a short, brief definition that will help you understand. We're going to look back at your list in just a second to see on your task list any of these that may work for you personally. These time management techniques, it's not one size fits all. I think it's whatever works for you. So in the first one here, we look at the big picture. So the big picture, I actually use this for some of the things that I do. If you conceptualize your week. And so one week, like this week is my follow-up week. I theme every single week that I have because I do have so many things. So I've got a trigger folder that's whenever I call my follow-up week, I'm reaching into that folder and I'm going back to emails that from 3 months ago to circle back and say, I know that we did this, was there anything else you needed before I deleted this? It's a follow-up. And those touch points show a lot of proactive approaches to time management. big picture, you can theme it as a catch-up week, where your week, this week, is solely focused on, I need to type out my notes from this class, or I need to work on this test that's gonna be next week, or I need to follow up with this person that I haven't responded to. It could be a catch-up week, an accountability week, where if you say you're gonna do something in a week, that you're doggone gonna do it. It could be a week to simplify. What I found oftentimes, we build in processes that are a lot more complicated than they have to be. Is there ways to simplify your life? I oversee the intranet system at the hospital in town, and so we have on our intranet, it's an internal internet system. And so we've got a master calendar on the front that all of our 1,000 employees go to use, so it's very important that that is accurate and up to date. I've learned to streamline some of those things, so I've tied it to Google Calendar that I can click repeat. And so I don't have to say, every 2 weeks on this day, there's going to be a huddle at 2 o'clock in the main dining room. I know that every 2 weeks at 2 o'clock in the main dining room, there's going to be a huddle, so I click repeat. So that automatically puts it on there for me, and I know that's something that's automated. So if there's any way to automate your life, that's something that you absolutely want to do. And one of my simplify weeks, I am a Department of One plus interns doing all of this, and so one of my weeks that I simplified, we were charged as a hospital to raise about $30,000 for United Way. And we love United Way, and we want to support United Way. But the difficulty is we have all of these other responsibilities that we've got to take care of as well. So on one of my simplify weeks, I decided that I was going to develop a capital campaign, the next campaign term that we have. So for United Way, what worked for us is that we signed up perpetual donations. And in those perpetual donations, I know now that whenever I start 2015 and go into the next United Way year, I've already got committed on books, in paper, payroll deduction, $30,000. So that gets me ahead of the game starting. So if there's anything that you can do in your life to simplify and take out some of those, that would be the big picture. Another technique is chunks of 10. It doesn't work for everything. If you look back at your list and you're thinking about those things, that's a really, really monster project. Whenever I worked on my master's, I had to write a dissertation. Whenever you're writing 80 to 100 pages on a particular topic and you've got to do qualitative and quantitative research, there's a lot that goes into that. And so what I would do is I had to break that massive project into chunks of 10. Anybody can commit to 10 minutes of anything. Chunks of 10. I would have very focused time, 10-minute chunks a day, where I would do nothing but focus on 10 minutes of moving towards a particular goal. Obviously, I had some time to work through this, and so every day I would have very, very, very focused time. So whenever I actually had my sit down and write time, I'd work through so many things. So even if you have on your list that you've got a closet in your house that's an absolute disaster, if you commit yourself to 10 minutes a day, imagine the amount of time that it would take to actually accomplish cleaning out your closet. 70 minutes a week, an hour and 10 minutes a week, and it only took you 10 minutes a day. We have, in my house, I'm a family of 5, and we've got very, very small children, but we do this at my house. My children, even my 2-year-old, is responsible for 10 minutes a day. And it's just very focused time. Obviously, his tasks are really small. Take these Q-tips and put them in here, and this is your job. And it'll take him 10 minutes to do that. I'll tell my daughter, we've got 10 minutes, you're cleaning up the toy room. Toy room is this is your goal. But in chunks of 10, I've got 5 people working 10 minutes a day. So now, I've got an hour of my time almost that is freed up by the weekend, multiply that times 7. I've got 350 focused minutes where everybody's just making a tiny little contribution. And so this, to me, is one of the most effective techniques that I've found, is just being able to apply 10 minutes on a very, very, very focused task. Another, I know you're familiar with Mark Twain. He says, if I were to eat a frog, I would eat the biggest, nastiest bullfrog that there was first thing in the morning. Does that mean anything, anybody? Get it over with. Because what happens, if you've got this massive project, if you've got something that you're really not looking forward to, we've all got stuff in our lives that we've got to do, but we don't want to do. If you've got those things in your life, if you go ahead and knock it out first thing in the morning, it's 8 o'clock, grab your coffee, knock it out. You ain't going to be happy about it. You'll be done before lunch, and then the rest of your day coast. But what happens if you don't go ahead and knock it first thing in the morning? Because we all procrastinate. There's things that we don't want to do. We push it off further and further and further and further. And so by the end of the day, you've just done all your emails, you've done all your filing, you've done everything that you wanted to do, and you've still got this task that's lingering over your head that you didn't want to touch. And so chunks of 10 is another one. Eatable frog is another one. Managing priorities and deadlines. It's so much easier if you just finish things and put them away immediately. Whenever I pick up the mail in the afternoon, I have to be uber organized. I have to. I have so many things in my life and so many responsibilities that I have to be organized. I do have in my car a trash bag, and that trash bag sits over on my passenger side. And whenever I go and check the mail every day, I open my mailbox, I go through it, and that is junk, and that is junk, and that is junk, and that is junk, and that is junk. And then this is a bill, so I take it out of the envelope. I even have my checkbook there, and I write a check, and I put it back in the envelope, and I put a stamp on it, and I put it back in the mailbox, and I'm done. You're finished it, and you're over it. You don't have to touch it again. If the paper comes into your possession, sometimes it doesn't make sense to just hoard papers because they somehow get lost and they never get filed. If you have something that's coming in, my children, every afternoon, it never fails, they have, dates and timelines and book fairs this time, and we're doing this at this day, and come to Chatters and eat with this one, and take pictures with this one, and this one needs this. Whenever I get that information, I automatically, every day at 8 o'clock, I go and I look at my calendar, and I pull all of my children's things, and I add it into their Google. I've got a Google Calendar that's separate, Google Calendar. I keep 13 calendars that I can turn on and off depending on what I need. But one of those, I know that was a wow. One of those is a follow-up schedule. So I click one button whenever I'm on my follow-up week, and automatically it lays over my regular agenda so I can plan that as part of my day. So I turn them on and off. I do have a children's calendar, and I turn it on every day at 5 o'clock. And so I'll know every day at 5 o'clock what my children are going to have for lunch the next day, so I can know whether I'm going to send their food to school or if they're going to even need that. And so I turn those on and off, and only at particular times of the day do I go back and reflect on that. But I keep my calendars very, very current, very, very up to date. Any deadlines that I have, I automatically add those. I work according to colors, so I'll have a red mark, and I'll know exactly what deadlines I have by just the flip of a button. It looks like we've got about 15 more minutes, so we'll push on. Our Director of Human Resources at the hospital is probably the most organized person that I've ever met in my entire life, and she does what's called a sundown rule. So, I probably get 200 to 300 emails a day, and then I'll probably get another 40 or so phone calls. Since I met her, I do employ the sundown rule. I think it works well. Even if I cannot, you email me and you have a specific question, if it takes more than a yes or a no or a quick response, I will respond to you. Every day I do respond to my emails and phone calls, even if it's to say, hey, listen, I got your message. I'm putting you on my calendar for next week to circle back and talk to you about it. So it's a sundown rule. It's already processed. It's in the start phases. And so whenever I'm working on my schedule for the following week, and I pull back from this folder and I say I need to follow up with this person. And so that's one thing that keeps me in line with that. Also, I mentioned Google Calendar. Some people are very visual kind of people. I don't like paper files. I don't have anything hardly on paper. Even, if there's my son's spelling words, I always take a picture of it with my phone and I email it to myself because I like digital copies of things because I always have my phone and I don't always have a filing system with me. Some people do prefer paper copies. And so if there's something that you can associate with a color, and you keep it all within that folder, maybe each subject is a color. And anytime you see that color, you associate it with that particular topic. I do a blood drive at our hospital, and so whenever I'm doing the blood drive, everything associated with blood drive in my life is red. And so I code any papers red. So in my filing cabinet, I don't have to dig for files. I can go in my filing cabinet, and I can say, grab the red folder, please. Because I know that's everything in my life. So some people are very visual. The biggest thing is just being able to identify what works specifically for you. And if you're thinking about a major overarching goal, that if you're able to set for yourself, again, realistic realistic but tangible guidelines according to deadlines. You set yourself on these guidelines, and we'll talk about goal setting in just a second. But it's like I tell my 7-year-old son, you can say, the biggest aspiring goal that I have in my life is I want to be governor of the state of Georgia. That's great. That's fantastic. So start setting yourselves goals towards that major overarching goal. And if you don't quite make it and you're just a senator, then you're a senator. But if you don't set those overall goals, then you don't work towards your progress. So again, we're looking at personal goals. So going back to your list, before we move on to this, I did want you to take just a second and look at your task list that you created a few minutes ago. I want you to see, are there any of those techniques that I mentioned that you feel like can move you closer to your goal? Would it be beneficial to you to theme your weeks according to breaking down that particular task? Or by identifying 10 minutes in the day that you'll have focused time on those? Or is there one morning that you can say in 2 weeks from now, knock it out on that morning? It'll take just a few more minutes. All right, so we're going to look now on starting setting up some personal goals. And if you're able to identify on a personal level, where do you want to be in 10 years? I mean, you're obviously in school practice. Is this where you want to finish here and then go to work where? And once you get there, what do you want to do? What position do you want to have? What title do you want? Do you want to be here? Do you want to be somewhere else? So if you'll take just a second and reflect on some of those personal goals that you have. And it's very important to be very precise and be able to set your priorities, write down your goals, because once we write down our goals, then we're able to crystallize those goals. So look at some of your lifetime goals. These are different areas, and I'm going to give you just a second to think about this, but set up your lifetime goals. In a career, where do you want to be? And what steps are you taking? What tangible steps do you take to your overall goal? What are your financial goals? My family and I were doing the debt Ramsey program, Dave Ramsey program. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's a debt snowball kind of thing, and it's a very, very disciplined approach to being out of debt. 2.5 years will be debt free. And it's just by really drilling down and focusing on that. If you would have asked me a year ago, and I would have never dreamed that we would have been able to move so fast and so quickly just by reallocating the money that we have. So it's a financial goal of our family to be debt-free. Education, how much education do you want? Are you done? It's great to be done. Or maybe you want a master's, or maybe you want a bachelor's, or maybe you want a specialist degree. Are there any other educational goals that you personally want to achieve? Family, artistic, attitude, physical. Do you want to be ripped within a year? What steps are you taking? Public service. How do you want to make the world a better place? Do you want to? If you do, how? What do you want to do? Is there anything that you're very passionate about? You know, we've got tons and tons of organizations in our town where you can really just plug in and make a difference. You know, we've got any of the 23 United Way agencies that are already set. We've also got SOAPs, and there's a number of different other programs. Is there anything that there's maybe a void in this area where there's some opportunity for service? So So you have to set, obviously you've got these overarching goals, but you have to set very, very specific goals to reach those overall goals. And your task list day to day should be taking small steps in the direction of those goals that you want to meet. I really fervently believe, my husband laughs at me whenever I ask him, what is your personal mission statement? He's a mechanic, so he doesn't think really like I do. But what is your personal mission statement? If you were to encapsulate who you want to be 10, 15 years from now into 2 sentences, what does it look like? What is most important to you? And how do you structure your day according to it? All of your goals need to be very SMART goals. Again, looking at your paper here, I think it's on the second page, setting SMART goals. Your goals need to be very specific. They have to be specific goals. In Proverbs, it tells us without a vision that the people will perish. You have to be very specific in what you want to accomplish. So they've got to be specific or significant. They've got to be measurable or meaningful. If you're not able to measure, if you give yourself a very vague, generalized statement of, in 10 years I want to be here and do this, kind of somewhere, then you don't know if you're going to be able to reach it or not. But they have to be attainable or action-oriented. They're not attainable if you're not able to physically, tangibly put things on your to-do list to accomplish those goals. They've also got to be relevant or rewarding. Is it something that you really, really, really want? You want to be a director of a department? Would that be an ultimate reward? And if it's something that's an ultimate reward, then obviously it's a very relevant goal for you. And it's got to be time-bound or trackable. You've got to have end of play there. You've got to be able to bound it to time. Within this time frame, I want to do this, because you've got to stop and reevaluate. Prioritization. I find it difficult because there are so many shifting priorities in my life where I almost daily have to stop and shift and refocus and determine what is more important in this moment. And doing that, you have to schedule. You've got to be very, very organized. Whatever organization methods you use that works for you is steps need to be in place. Organizing emails. By the end of the day, I do get 200 to 300 emails, but by the end of the day, I don't have any in my inbox because I always want to start my day with just those that have come in overnight. And that's something that I have to do because I can't shift through 1,000 emails at the end of the week. I've got to focus on them at one time. You've got to be self-motivated. And I can't stress how important it is to be self-motivated and be able to drive yourself towards the goal that you want. Delegation. Some of us have a difficult time with being able to delegate. This once was really a huge fault of mine that I had a difficult time because I was so interested in so many things that it was difficult for me to delegate. But now I find the delegation is very free if you've got a group that's working collaboratively together to be able to move towards one specific goal. The biggest goal is just whatever overarching, however you deem success, however many team members it takes to move towards that goal, you're still reaching the goal. So you're still being rewarded in the end. Information integration. I do subscribe to a number of periodicals and a number of newspapers and that sort of thing. I have one day a week that I go through and I clip articles that are of significance to me. I usually scan those articles in and I file them and I save them, and then I do not keep masses and masses of articles and papers. Organization is key. So, if you'll take a look again take a look at your list there, according to the list that you made at the very, very beginning. And now I want you to look at prioritizing those events. What is most important to you now? Thinking of your overall goals, what is most important to you in achieving those overall goals? If it's just to graduate from STC, that's great. Which of those are going to push you towards graduation? So prioritize it according to order of importance. couple more minutes, and so I did want to share with you too. Think of those things in your mind as you have time, some of the in-between time. We're all stuck waiting at Verizon, and we've got to get our phone fixed, or we're stuck somewhere and we can't really do anything. We're at a standstill. We're in between classes. You're doing something. I always have an in-between kind of list, where it's either in my bag, or it's on my person, or it's on my phone, where it's an in-between kind of time. And I'm going to work on this, and it's going to be focused time whenever I'm in between whatever, but I'm going to pull back and push towards. Again, some tips for you guys: read your course calendars. They're telling you ahead of time when things are due. If you go ahead and plan for that, plan ahead, make your schedules, make your checklists, stay organized. Okay, maybe we're just about even, guys. All right, so for the sake of time, can't push through these other slides, which is fine. I did want to see if you guys had any questions.